Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Crowd Live. Bryce, Trent, Will Manis, and Ralph Larry here with you on a beautiful Monday evening. Guys, how was your weekend? We do this every single time we start the first show of the week. But I'll go ahead and start it off. Will, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing good. Got some basketball in this afternoon. Bryce and I did, and before that I got some golf in. So it was a good Monday for me after a long weekend of work.
There you go. Ralph, how about yourself, man? How was your weekend?
It was all right. It rained all weekend, so didn't do much. Spent some time with my dad for Father's Day and some family, and then got some much needed rest today after a long week of work last week. So.
Yeah, most definitely. The rain, and it was kind of crazy. Last night, the rain stopped here in the Columbus, Georgia area, and then today it's been a really nice day after we had some weather that looked like it was going to be bad. Very nice outside now. But the big story, especially here in the state of Georgia, happened inside a building, and it didn't happen in Georgia whatsoever. It happened up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as the Hawks advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals with a Game 7 win over the 76ers. Guys, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk a little bit about the Philly collapse that kind of felt like it happened after the big leads they had in Games 5 and Game 6, and even the opportunities they had there in Game 7. We're going to talk a little bit about Ben Simmons, but first off, I just want to get your immediate reaction on the Hawks side of things. I mean, right now, the pride, I feel like, of the state of Georgia and the sports, and the Hawks are kind of taking that over from the Braves, it seems like. It's been cool. This has been a cool ride to see that.
Don't say that.
This has been a cool ride, though, nonetheless, to see what Atlanta's been able to do. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about that later. But first off, Ralph, I'll start with you. I mean, what's it been like to see this Hawks team that was not even in the playoff picture in March, and now they are one of the top 4 teams left in the quest for the Larry O'Brien Trophy?
Yeah, I mean, it shows you how big McMillan's been for this team. He took over, and they weren't even in playoff contention. I think they were below 500, and they ended up winning. I think they won like 10 straight at one point, and they were just dominant for the second half of the season. And and Trae Young said it best: a team with no All-Stars, no first-team All-NBA selections, no first-team defense, and no rookies or anything on the list. That a bunch of nobodies basically just cruised through this season, and no one really noticed until they made the playoffs. And then people doubted them throughout the first series. Okay, the Knicks will beat them 5 or 6, and then they beat the Knicks. Well, 76ers will take care of them. Now they're here, and people are starting to worry about is Atlanta the real deal? And if they're not this year, they're going to be the next few years, because they're a young team with a very talented roster, and they're only getting better every day.
Yeah, this is a team that is definitely getting better. I think you hit the nail right on the head. No one really ever gave them a chance, but they just kind of keep showing up and finding ways to win. And I think, Will, that's something that we were talking about. They just keep finding ways to win. Now, we'll talk about it, whether it's the other team kind of maybe losing some focus. But I think it's safe to say that this rebuild that the Hawks underwent, they're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor that some of those lean years over the past couple of years for Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. Put me at the top of the list for the doubt of the doubters of the Hawks. I thought the Hawks had no shot. Thought they were lucky to make the playoffs. Thought they got lucky against the Knicks, because the Knicks, the last decade for the Knicks, anytime they make the playoffs, which has been rare, they choke in the playoffs. 76ers, they choke too, and they choked in this series big time. But you got to give credit to the Hawks. Like you said, they just find ways to win. They're a guard-dominant team. They matched up well with Philadelphia. I think they match up well with Milwaukee. I don't want to get ahead of us as talk about the conference finals, but I think they match up well against Milwaukee, so we'll have to see.
I got a comment here from a good friend, Josh Brown. Love how you guys talk about the Hawks, but not the Dream. Big yikes. Bet Ralph doesn't even know who plays tight end for the Atlanta Dream. Josh, I'm glad that you're tuning in. We've missed you in our comments section for sure. To go back to Atlanta, Will, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is a team, there were a lot of doubters, and I don't think you should feel bad for a team that was sitting at 14-20, and you fired your coach mid-season. And obviously they already came out with the Executive Year of the Year awards. But I mean, if a coach could get a Coach of the Year award for just half a season, I think Nate McMillan earns that honor. And obviously, you know,
Absolutely.
Phoenix has been very good with what they did out west. But to me, they had maybe some expectations of being better. Atlanta did too, but the turnaround we've seen from the Hawks. And guys, that begs the question. Obviously, Atlanta advances over a hard-fought series with Philadelphia. But is this more, this is kind of what the national media is this more of the Philly collapse or the Hawks' talent? We all agree that this Hawks franchise has a very young core, like Ralph said, that is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I'll say, too, I think they're going to also become a free agent destination if they could get a big veteran player. We may have to talk about that at some point when the season's over. Man, this team could really be an elite team in the East. And I say that they're saying, well, Bryce, they're the final two in the East. I think that we can all agree they're playing a little bit over their head right now, but it's because almost like we'll say the ignorance is bliss. The ignorance, what they don't know is not hurting them. I mean, these are guys that logged their first postseason minutes in that game one against New York.
Yeah, no, they're not one of the top two teams in the East. The top two teams in the East played in the conference semifinals, the Bucks and the Nets. But to get to Philly collapse or Hawks talent, I think I already gave my opinion. I think Philly choked. They choked big time. We were talking about it in the pre-show. The league is so guard dominant. You know, I don't want to get ahead to our next conversation about Ben Simmons, but that was the difference, was the guard play. And Philly just didn't have guards to match, especially Trae Young. Trae Young kind of did it on his own, but obviously Kevin Huerter makes big shots. Philly didn't have an answer, you know, and that's just the way the league is. That's the way the game is played now. You got to have guards that can shoot off the dribble, can bring it. I mean, and Philly didn't have that. So, but again, they had a big lead in Game 5, had a big lead in Game 6. They definitely collapsed those games. So I think it's more of a Philly collapse over the Hawks talent, which they're obviously very talented.
Yeah, and I think it's the fine line of this is a talented Hawks team. We've seen Trae Young take the postseason by storm. The conversation between Luka and Trae is definitely going to be something that follows those two guys' careers as long as they are. But save for last night, Trae has been spectacular. He's been a bona fide superstar in the playoffs. Ralph, for you, I mean, is this more of a thing where we've seen – I think you have to give credit to Atlanta staying the course and coming back, but it almost seemed like Philly, and I want to give credit to this because on Inside the NBA on TNT, I know a lot of people give, you know, a lot of throwback to it or should blow back to it because it's just a bunch of guys but they really know what they're talking about. All of these guys played. So I want to ask you this, Ralph, because this is something that Kenny Smith was talking about. He said, you know, you have to give Atlanta credit. They stayed the course. They stayed within themselves to come back. But it's almost like everything was happening so easily for Philadelphia. Then like one thing, Atlanta just kind of tightened one screw. And then one by one, the things that were easy were no longer easy. And Philadelphia didn't really ever develop that rhythm. And before you knew it, the Hawks took over. So is it more of Philly's collapse or the Hawks' talent, we should say? I
mean, it's so hard to choose between that because I want to say Atlanta's talent, but I also agree with what Will said. Philly did choke a little bit. And I would say, though, that is, you know, when Philly choked at one moment, Atlanta took advantage of that moment, and they rode with it the rest of the game. You look at, was it Game 5, and they were down, 20-something points going into the fourth quarter? And Philly couldn't hit the broadside of a barn to save their lives, and then Atlanta was hitting every shot, and they took advantage of winning the game. And people were looking like, what just happened? You know, because Atlanta takes advantage of your one mistake, and they'll run through a 10-0 run the next minute and a half, and you're just confused. It's like, okay, the lead's cut down to, you know, single digits, and you're confused. And sometimes you just got to take advantage of other teams' mistakes and run with it. I think that's what Atlanta's done best this whole year. Now, credit to what Atlanta's done. Nate McMillan has really coached them very well this year, and you can see with his coaching records that he's taken over, and just the guys fall behind him very well. And I think the whole team is really taking a step up. Except with Kevin Huerter. Kevin Huerter took a huge step last night and, you know, dropped 27 on the 76ers. And a lot of people don't really realize, like, he can score when he wants to, and Trae's on drop 30 to 40 a game most of the time. But Kevin Huerter's right there behind him in the scoring ability.
Sorry, Ralph. Josh Brown just shouted you out on Twitter. Just tuned into the Crowded Booth podcast live. I lasted 49 seconds. They talk about the Hawks, but never mentioned the Dream. I doubt Ralph Leary could even name the tight end for the Dream. They say they like sports, but it looks like there's a contingency on that.
Oh, no.
Josh, we appreciate the love. But no, Ralph, going back to what you said, it's perfect. And I think it's almost the balance of what it is. Will laid out that this was a taking. I mean, let's go back to Game 4 back in Philly, guys, or I should say in Atlanta. That was very pivotal because Philly had the 2-1 lead. They really had just blown Atlanta out Games 2 and Games 3, and Atlanta's able to come back from an 18-point deficit. Game 5, they come back from a 26-point deficit. Game 6 was back and forth between the two teams with Philly taking it. But still, and I'll say this, you always kind of felt like this team had a chance, and a lot of it was due to some offensive inconsistency. So that kind of brings us to the big glaring question. There's a lot of fingers that you can point, but I don't know if you guys caught the post-game press conference last night with Joel Embiid. He alluded to some specific moments he felt like was a turning point, and they both involved Ben Simmons. So that brings us the Ben Simmons dilemma. I don't think when Ben Simmons came out at LSU that we thought it was going to be this bad in a shooting way. You thought, okay, the guy is very aggressive. He gets to the basket. But, Will, we were talking earlier, and you said you still have some things that you would love to see. You still obviously think he has a place in the NBA. He's very athletic, a very good defender. Absolutely. But I think the biggest thing is going to be the mental hurdle, and correct me if I'm wrong, of shooting because he's not even taking the shots anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, I think his game compares is a lot similar to Russell Westbrook's game. Russell Westbrook doesn't have much of an outside shot either. So Ben Simmons definitely still has a place in this league. I think maybe his time with Philly's up, or Philly is going to have to make a total change with how they're approaching their roster. I don't think he should be playing point guard for the 76ers anymore. I think they would have an elite front court, probably top 3 front court in the NBA if they slide him to power forward and Joel Embiid stays at center. But, a lot of the league is going positionless. So you can have him on the floor and just not let him be your primary ball handler. He's a great ball handler, but, Joel Embiid alluded to it in the post-game press conference. He has those times when he's too aggressive and loses the handle on the ball. So, I think it can work, but Philly's going to have to change their approach. Like, you look at the guards on their roster. Seth Curry, he's really the only one that stood out in the whole series. George Hill, aging veteran. Good to have, but aging. And he had 3 points in Game 7. He played 21 minutes. That's not what you're looking for out of a vet. Shake Milton, young guard. I think he could slide in and play there. But there's not a ton of guards on this roster, number one, and there's no elite guards on the roster, number 2. So they're going to have to upgrade that guard position if they want to keep Ben Simmons on the floor.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And I know Ralph mentioned a guy, Tyrese Maxey, who was impressive, but the guy's a rookie. You're trying to win a championship now. That's where Philly feels like they are. And so, like you said, if it's this offseason going out and getting a guy that can be a great ball handler, we know Ben Simmons has elite passing ability. But I think it's what we saw, and obviously the biggest part of it was the wide open opportunity for a dunk that he had, and he passes it off. It's just things like that. I think that the being scared to shoot, it's a mental thing right now. Ben Simmons has the talent.
You can't be 6'11" and be afraid to go up to the basket.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't. You can be pass first all you want, but if you got an open lane and you're 6'11", there's no excuse why you're not taking that.
And Trae Young's covering you. I mean, Trae Young's nowhere close to you on the high. I mean, you got to take advantage of that.
He should have been backing down Trae Young in the post the whole series.
I think it's bad. It shows you how how conscious he's thinking. Like, okay, I'm not going to shoot this because I'll miss it and I'll ruin the game for us. And then I'm going to go in for a layup and just pass it out. And then they go a foul shot and they think they made 1 or 2 on the free throws. You lost a huge chance to really take advantage of the game with a huge dunk and probably get a momentum change going on earlier, honestly.
Yeah, it would have been a massive momentum shifter, and I think that's just kind of what you felt as well. And I don't know if you guys saw this as well, but defensively, Philly played about as well as they could for as long as they could. I mean, you shut down Trae Young, but then I think what was surprising, what stood out to me is that showed that this Hawks team is no longer where ever since Trae Young's been drafted, it's no longer stop Trae and you're going to win. I mean, Kevin Huerter came up in a big, big way. Danilo Gallinari, that is looking like one of the better free agent signings, really, and especially Atlanta. I mean, he's come up big, almost as a vocal leader as well on the bench. So I think it's very interesting to kind of see how Atlanta continues to play. It's also, Will, like you said, going to be seeing how Philly, because the difference between these two teams is Atlanta didn't think they were going to be here. They're just riding high on the energy. We're going to talk before we go to break. But Philly, they expect to be in the NBA Finals. They expect to be a championship caliber team, and they expect to be in that upper echelon of the East like you were talking about with Milwaukee and Brooklyn. But I would say outside of Joel Embiid, they don't have – you can't call yourself an elite player and not be able to shoot the ball. And I think Ben Simmons is just missing that part of his game. But the problem is that's such an important – because like you said, this is a scoring first lead. Bill Russell said in an interview, he said, and Bill Russell, obviously he's older now, but he said, in an interview recently, he said, you can talk about all you want. This league's about getting buckets. And if you can't get buckets, really in the end, you're not going to be a superstar level player. We see great role players, but that's not what they want and what they see for Ben Simmons. We're talking about the Hawks and the 76ers here on the Crowded Booth Live. And so right now, it's just been the term they've been using, guys, is the Hawks are playing with house money heading into Eastern Conference Finals. Nobody thought they were going to get here. I was talking with Ralph earlier today and talking with you, Will, and talking with some of our other friends, and we were saying, I expect, and I'll go ahead and throw this out here, I expect Milwaukee to win this series. I think that everyone does. But the fact that Atlanta has just continued to – they've just continued to just buck the trend of what we think. I mean – who knows? I mean, at this point, who knows? Because Atlanta's continued to do it. I didn't really feel like they had much of a shot of stopping Joel Embiid. Embiid got what he did, but we saw also, I think that this Bucks team is deeper offensively, and it's going to be interesting to see. But, guys, we won't get too much into the preview of the series that starts on Wednesday. But would you agree that if this season would have ended last night for Atlanta, I'd have packed up my bag and said, okay, let's get after it next year because we just made it the Eastern Conference semis. Will start us off with that.
Yeah, I think it's already been a huge success. I think playing with house money is the perfect way to put it. The Hawks had no business being here. I didn't think they had any business even getting close to even sniffing the Eastern Conference Finals. But it just shows what good front offices can do, especially in a short amount of time like the Hawks have done. When the process started in Philly, I think it was 2012, 2013. Since then, the Hawks – this is their second Eastern Conference Finals appearance. The Sixers have not made one yet. So the Sixers, for 8 years, have basically pretty much still been rebuilding, even though the last 2 or 3 they feel like they haven't been. And the Hawks turn it around in half a season. So say what you want about their front office. I think their front office is better now. Philly's front office is better now than it was the previous front office. I think the previous front office was better than the one before that. So they're still building, and that's – like you said, they're frustrated. They expected to be here. They expect to have made the conference finals at minimum, especially being the 1 seed. So disappointing for Philly. Great year for the Hawks, regardless of what happens in the conference finals.
Great year for the Hawks. Ralph, Ernie Johnson said to Trae Young in the postgame interview, he said, Trae, has it set in, or when will it? I know you're going to enjoy this one, but has it set in that, and I know Milwaukee's there, they're elite, but has it set in the fact that Atlanta is 4 wins away from their first ever NBA Finals appearance? When you hear that, what does that mean if coming into this season and knowing what Atlanta had in front of them? Like Will said, this is a team in the midst of all of Philly's rebuild. The Hawks were like the number 1 seed in the East and then went under another rebuild and now find themselves back in the Eastern Conference Finals for the second time in a decade. So for you, when you think about the fact, I know Milwaukee's there, Milwaukee's heavily favored, but if the Hawks are 4 wins away from the NBA Finals, if I told you that in March, what would you have been thinking?
I mean, I've been shocked. I mean, I've said, well, an 8 seed just made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, in March, I was expecting to be 7 or 8 seed, make the playoffs, get knocked out first round, and I was okay with that. Making the playoffs was the goal. I felt like this year for the Hawks, and you're talking about a team that picked 4th overall in the draft last year. I mean, I think if I'm remembering that correct, I was watching it with Bryce. I'm pretty sure, and I was like, they can draft someone good here and maybe build off that for the next few years, but it's going to take a while for this team to get really back into the playoffs and consistently. And we're sitting here now in the Eastern Conference Finals, playing in Milwaukee on Wednesday, like you said, 4 wins away from being in Atlanta or being in the finals. And I like what Nate McMillan said, or when they asked him, what their plans are after the game. And he said, we're going back to the hotel and we're staying until tomorrow because I told these guys to plan to pack to be in Milwaukee on Wednesday. And that just shows you how determined this team is really to keep moving on and that they want to be here. They're not just expecting to keep winning. We might win tomorrow, but they want to win. They want to be here. They're ready. I mean, if you watch Nick McMillan's post-game speech, it makes you want to run through a brick wall. I mean, he not very fired up, but just what he says just gets them ready to go. And it's just they like him. They fall behind him in line, and then they're ready to play for him.
It's amazing how players respond to a manager, coach that they really like to play for. We're going to talk about that in the second half of the show, but I think it's really important. And before we take a break right here, as we go to commercial, I'll say it's also interesting to see a team that didn't have a lot of confidence in their abilities, which I felt like Philly was, and a team that was uber confident in what they had to do. It felt like they had nothing to lose. Like you said, Will, nobody expected them to be here, and Atlanta's just playing with house money right now. But we're going to come back. We're going to talk about that other team that makes their way up in North Atlanta. Obviously, the Atlanta Braves. They just finished up Game 1 of the doubleheader. We'll take a look at that one. And then also Game 2 of the doubleheader starts here in about 45 minutes. Hey, they didn't get no hit. So there you go. There you go. That's good news. That's good news. We'll talk about it when we come back.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
We said this a couple weeks ago. We're back here in the Credit Booth Live, but the Atlanta Braves have a very important 2 weeks ahead. We talked about that. I feel like we've been saying that for about a month now, but I think it's almost now crunch time.
We're just pushing it back.
Braves. We're just pushing it back.
We're just waiting for the Braves to have a good 2 weeks.
There you go. I told Ralph this. I said the crazy thing about baseball is if Atlanta has 2 good weeks, they may be in the NLS East lead, or they may be a game out. Who knows?
Yeah.
Wait,
but we're talking about this.
You call that the NL East or the NL least?
The NL least. The NL least. So yeah, we'll say that.
I don't know.
Just mash it up.
They might be the NL least.
They might be. They might be. But we'll talk about this first off. Obviously, the doubleheader yesterday, I was very impressed with how Atlanta played. And also they managed, the rain out on Saturday after the bats got hot. Adam Wainwright seemingly always, just pitches well against the Braves ever since.
What you get for trading him.
That's what you get for trading for J.D. Drew. That's okay, though. But obviously the nightcap, national TV, Atlanta able to get a big one-run win. Guys, we haven't seen a lot of those. The Braves have not been on the winning side of a one-run win. That felt good to see. But the Braves have this 2-week stand is going to be huge. They're playing, obviously, 4 games. They just dropped one of the Mets 4-2. And we would obviously say that the bullpen, once again, didn't quite come through in a situation. If not, it could have been different. But hats off, Ralph and I were watching, to Kyle Muller. His first major league start, he goes toe-to-toe. I'm going to tell you, too, he didn't allow a hit, even though the box score is going to tell you that, because that was not a base hit that trickled off the glove of Guillermo Heredia. But I want to go through the schedule with you guys because they've got 3 more with the Mets. Then they go on the road to Cincinnati, who is 4th in the NL Central. They're only 4 games out, but it's a Reds team that's been inconsistent, much like Atlanta. Then they come back home against the Mets. That's going to round out the month of June. Take us into July. They're home against the Marlins and on the road against the Pirates. That kind of wraps up this next 2 weeks. So let's get hypothetical here, guys. Let's talk about this Mets. The best case scenario would be, hey, we don't have to face Jacob deGrom anymore. Let's just go win these next 3 games. Yeah. The bats have started to pick up a little bit. We're going to talk about that. Freddie Freeman has seen that average climb up. He's actually been on fire the past 2 weeks. Ozzie Albies with another home run. Some guys are starting to come to life. We've had some great outings from Charlie Morton, Max Fried over the weekend. Drew Smyly was able to provide some consistency.
Drew Smyly.
Believe it or not,
yeah,
Drew Smyly was able to pitch well. But I want to say this because if you look at it, guys, you look at the schedule, if you could take 3 away from the Mets, you would be 3 games out heading into a series in Cincinnati. And the Reds, the Braves never play well at Great American Ballpark. But if you feel like you could just start winning those series, and then in the back end, maybe sweep Pittsburgh on the road, the next 2 weeks you could find yourself maybe a game or 2 above 500 and tied for the NL East lead. I want to get your thoughts on that. Ralph, I'll start with you because you're getting closer to the trade deadline. I feel like we're going to start to see those trade dominoes fall the first week and maybe second week of July because there's a lot of teams that started off slow. And so we have these teams that are not going to compete whatsoever in a classification by themselves. But then you have teams that were expected to be really good, case in point the Braves, that are going to need help if they want to make a playoff push.
Yeah, I mean the next 2 weeks are huge for all teams in baseball, technically, especially when you have guys who are like the Rangers and bottom of the division teams that are going to be looking to trade and looking to shop or not shop, looking to sell guys and I think the Braves will be looking around for a lot of these younger guys and some guys who are hot right now on these good teams. And like I said a few weeks ago, Kyle Gibson for the Rangers right now. But yeah, these next 2 weeks are huge for the Braves. You need to get every series win you can get right now. I think if you can get the rest of the wins from the Mets, you don't have to face DeGrom the rest of the week. Actually, I think you have to face him Friday. If I looked at the schedule, I just saw the schedule a minute ago. It said, he's pitching Friday probably. So you're looking at a pretty dominant week if you can get every win. I mean, Cincinnati is going to be, they're a huge team. They like to hit a lot of home runs. But like you said, they have been inconsistent like the Braves. Their pitching's been inconsistent, I feel like. Their bullpen's not really there. But the Braves are having to step up the next few weeks. I think, this week is huge with playing a division rival. If you can take the rest of the series this week, you're sitting really well going into Cincinnati on a hot streak, hopefully.
Yeah, Ralph, like you were saying, 6 of your next 10 games are going to come against this Mets team. Will, when you see that, obviously the Braves will not face the Mets again until October. So this is, or at home, I should say. This is really important because you get the Mets on the road. You've gotten through DeGrom. If you could win this game tonight, take some confidence into Tuesday and Wednesday, and then let's just say the bats are rolling. And I mean, let's get a little frisky with it. Let's say that Atlanta sweeps Cincinnati. I'm not saying that the thing is the whole year, this team, it's not they don't have the ability to do it. They just haven't executed. We talked about it last week. If they start executing, this is a schedule gap after a nightmare that you had to face a week or two ago. You get the Reds and the Pirates and the Marlins. Man, if you can just split or win the series against the Mets and win the rest of those series, you're sitting pretty about second week of July after July 4th, feeling good about your chances heading to the deadline.
Well, what worries me right now about the Braves is they're 4 games under 500. Anytime the Braves have gotten to 500, they get on a losing streak. So hopefully that's not the case. And now this, I think we've said it every time, this 2-week stretch is going to determine the season, I think, for the Braves. If they can get to 500 and push through, get above 500 a few games, they're going to be in a good spot. If they do like they've done all year, get to 500 and then lose 3 or 4 in a row, I mean, they're staring down the barrel, missing the playoffs totally, which they're a team expected to be competing for the National League pennant. But yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule, I mean, this 8-day stretch is insane. Dating back to yesterday, the Braves have to play 10 games in 8 days. Yeah, 2 against the Cardinals. They split those. Hopefully, they can split tonight against the Mets. I don't think you can ask for anything more than that. But I mean, except for that 3 games against the Mets next week, the Braves should win almost all the games.
Yeah,
I mean,
they really should. You're right.
They should. I mean, the Marlins. We know the Marlins have good young arms. They're going to give them trouble. But that Marlins bullpen is not very good. The Pirates are terrible. Anything less, if we don't win that series, if the Braves don't win that series against the Pirates, we're going to be in some big trouble. And the Reds don't really scare me either because, yeah, like Ralph said, they hit a ton of home runs, but their pitching's not very good. Luis Castillo was supposed to be their ace, and he's been awful. And their bullpen, I think I can name 2 guys in there. One of them's been terrible. Yeah, it's Amir Garrett. He's been awful.
But you're completely right. And let me take you even up to the All-Star break, okay? After that Pirate series, you get a day off, and then you go on the road to Miami. But the key part in what you said is Atlanta's got to be above 500 before the All-Star break because then you come home, you face Tampa, the San Diego Padres. You're on the road against Philly. You're on the road for another 4-game series against the New York Mets. I'm sorry, that's 5 games because it's a 4-game series and there's a doubleheader on that Monday. And then you're back home again to close out the month of July with the Brewers. So if you take us up the All-Star break and Atlanta's sitting, 3 or 4 games above 500, I'm feeling okay. That means they've worked some things out. This is huge.
This 2-week stretch, really, not the cliche that we're making that this 2-week stretch is important. This is extremely important for the Braves because you look, Brewers, they're tied for the NL Central lead. They just got done playing the Cardinals. They're a 500 team, 4 games back, but they're in the wild card hunt. Padres, we know how good they are. Okay, this is insane. The Padres are 10 games over 500, and they're 5 games back of the Giants. They're sitting in 3rd in the NL West. That's how strong the NL West is. And the Rays, we know how good the Rays are. The Rays, they're a half game behind the Red Sox because they just had a blunder of a series. They got swept by the Mariners.
They got swept past 2 weekends, actually.
Yeah, past 2
weekends.
And then the Phillies the Phillies, they are second in the NL East, but they're a game under 500. But we know how good the Phillies are and how good they play against the Braves. So really, the Braves have got to get to 500 to have a chance, and they've got to really need to get over 500 to feel good and get that momentum rolling into the All-Star weekend and come out of it, because the Braves are going to have a couple guys there at All-Star weekend, so they'll like Acuna will get at bats, Riley will get at bats, so it won't really be a layoff. Albies will get at bats or one at bat, so there won't be a layoff for especially the big players. So you cannot stress how important this 2 weeks is for the Braves.
You were talking about that. Atlanta will not face a team after the All-Star break that is currently, as of today, June 21st, more than 7 games out of their potential playoff race. And that's kind of where I'm going to be judging if you're kind of in the race still, because you could have a good week and be right back in it, until they play Miami on August the 16th. So from July 5th, for a month straight, you're playing playoff teams. So you've really got to build up against a weaker part of your schedule, which is this 2-week window. I think it's very important. Also, according to Fangraphs, Atlanta has this was before the loss just moments ago, 15.4% of making the postseason. I'll tell you this, you're not going to win the wild card. With the way the NL West, it's going to be 3 teams out of the NL West. You're going to get a team out of the Central, and then you're going to have to knock off the Mets, which I think Braves fans are waiting for the Mets to Met. Ralph and I just saw they just got Jeff McNeil back. That's going to be a bat they can put in their lineup. But you just feel like with Atlanta, you're going to have a chance because the bats have started to pick up a little bit. We've seen those averages creep up a little bit. There's also, I'll say this too, Freddie Freeman smiled this past weekend. I mean, he was having fun. So I think it's going to be important, guys, to see. But the big question is can they do it?
Yeah. That interview Alex Anthopoulos did with Jeff Schultz, a week ago, really scares me about the end of the season, because if the Braves are kind of piddling, if they get to 500 before the All-Star break, I don't think that's going to be good enough, because if they come out and they struggle, I feel like they're going to sell. I feel like they're going to sell. They're going to cut their losses this year and pack it in, just because that's ownership. And ownership clearly does not want to let that. Well, they've got Alex Anthopoulos' hands tied. Mm-hmm. They can't let him go be the great GM that he is, the GM that we saw in Toronto, which is who Braves fans thought they were going to get. Yeah. And I think that interview told everybody what they already suspected, that Liberty Media was not going to let Alex Anthopoulos be Alex Anthopoulos and make a trade for a David Price, a Troy Tulowitzki, like he did in Toronto to get them back in the playoffs after a 20-year. It's not that dire in Atlanta, but his hands are going to be tied.
Well, and just for the people watching, because we do have some folks watching today that may not know, the Atlanta Braves will not be trying to get Troy Tulowitzki at this deadline deal. But no, your point is valid. I think the biggest thing is going to be also, it's going to be interesting because, there's the conversation as we wrap up here. There's the conversation of people, well, we should just trade Freddie Freeman. They're not going to trade Freddie Freeman. So this is a team that's not built to sell off pieces, because what's there to sell? Somebody might be interested in Pablo Sandoval as a bench bat in the playoffs. Maybe somebody needs a 4th outfielder in Abraham Almonte or, Guillermo Heredia, but you don't have any pieces to really sell.
They may want another starter. Charlie Morton's had a couple good starts. If you can keep that momentum go. Yeah. Drew Smiley, if they want to lefty out of the pen, because I don't think any other team in baseball thinks he's a starting pitcher except the Atlanta Braves. I don't know how they
Baltimore might try him out there. Baltimore might trot him out there. But to your
point, won't even waste their time.
Let's say Atlanta's best piece to sell off is Charlie Morton. I love Charlie Morton. He's just been solid. Like, he's just been exactly a 3 or a 4 in the rotation for if you were just looking at what you would want in a rotation. He's been good. But he's
been like Julio Teheran was for a lot of years. He's a 3 or 4. He's a 3 or 4 really, but he's having to pretend to be a number 1.
Yeah. So I'll ask you this, guys, just very, very bluntly, as we, this will be the last segment of the show. Can they do it? Do you believe not the Falcons? We're not even going to talk about them. But do you believe that the Braves can get through this 2 weeks, sit 2 or 3 games above 500, and maybe make a run as we get close to the deadline? Ralph, I'll start with you.
If the starting pitching stays like it has been lately, I think they can, because the starting pitching has been great lately, I feel like. I mean, you're going to have a few bumps in the road. And I think the younger guys coming up, Mueller, Davidson, have pitched very well lately. And the bullpen, I mean, I've been saying it for weeks, it's going to come around. But, I mean, that's your big, huge thing. We've talked about it for weeks. The bullpen needs to step up. And they've had great games this past weekend against St. Louis. They had a great week. Now, hit the batting.
Luke Jackson.
Luke, if you don't think Luke Jackson's the best pitcher, something's wrong with you. And the bullpen, at least. I mean, he has been.
And I'll say it, Will. I mean, I'd let him close.
I would too.
I would too.
Right now.
He has all the
I think
tools.
everybody forgot what he did in 2019 when nobody wanted to be closer.
And I would say his stuff is better. He's got better command and stuff than he had.
I think he's more
2019.
confident on the mound than he
So.
He
ever
is.
has.
That's exactly right.
He's
And,
definitely more confident,
yeah.
no question about it.
He had he had a
Yeah.
massive unlucky year last year.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rough year last year, and I still think he pitched pretty well last year.
Yeah.
But the bats are coming around. I think everyone's starting to see a lot of rise in everyone's batting average. Ozzy's, I think, second on the team in RBIs. I think he's sitting in a great spot in the lineup right now for him. Everything's starting to come around. The bullpen is just that one big question mark right there.
Yeah.
Who's your closer? Who are you going to throw out there when you need someone to just shut the inning down? And they didn't have that today. Bases loaded. What? 1 out, 2 outs.
Mm-hmm.
2 outs. Sean Newcomb comes in there and gets a base hit.
Yeah.
Obviously that's who you got to go with. You got to go lefty matchup. Just didn't work out for you. But it's just.
Or you could go Luke Jackson because he gets lefties out better than
I
most
agree.
left-handed pitchers.
But he'd also.
But the argument's going to be you can't throw him because Jackson, if you're going to make a postseason run, is going to have to be that go-to guy out of the pen. But yeah, no, Will, what do you think? I mean, I know that you've kind of been ever since opening day. It's been one of those things. The bullpen's an issue. The bullpen's an issue. I agree with Ralph. If the starting pitching becomes more consistent, and we see that, if you take Max Fried's first 3 starts out, he's been very, very good this season.
Mm-hmm.
Starting pitching's better. Offense starts to pick it up. But I'm telling you, it's very disheartening as an offense. Every time you score, you know that you're going to have to continue to score because I'll say before this series against the Cardinals, that Red Sox series, the Braves scored 16 runs in those 2 games combined and didn't win.
Yeah.
That's disheartening. So, for you, the offense, does everything kind of turn around? Do they get some bullpen arms, or is this just something that Atlanta's going to have to wait for 2022 to really challenge again? Not say challenge, to try to go for the NL East.
I think it's going to be 2022. I don't think this is the Braves' year. I mean, said it. They get to 500, and then they go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, go right back down to where they were. And, that's baseball. That's baseball. It's not anybody's fault. It's not that they're underachieving. And like you said, I think the mental side of all the players from knowing that you have a few good games around to get to 500 where you want to be to build that momentum, then you lose a couple in a row. The offense against the Red Sox, you said, score 16 runs in 2 games and don't win a single game. The Marcell Ozuna thing, that just has disheartened everybody. Everybody hates it. I think it's affecting everybody on the team.
Losing
I just don't think it's a
Huascar
Braves
Ynoa, who was one of the best pitchers on the whole
Huascar
staff.
Ynoa.
Travis
Yep.
d'Arnaud, early in the season, even though he was
Travis
struggling. I mean,
d'Arnaud, yep.
the mental aspect, I think, is affected.
Yeah, and it's not the Braves' year. It seems like any luck that comes the Braves' way is all bad.
Yeah. Well, I hope that they can. I think we all do. We hope that they can.
Yeah.
They have the pieces in place. But like you said, talk with somebody, they said, with everything going on, this may not just be the Braves' year. The way you can spin that positive is this team is still super, super young. They still have some great talent. And if they loosen the strains a little bit on the ownership, maybe this team can be fun. But it's
if you're looking to 2022, you got to bring Freddie Freeman back because that would be a gaping hole in the lineup.
Mm-hmm. It would
that
be.
You can't replace. You can't replace him, so you got to bring him back.
You can't replace him on all aspects of the game defensively. What he has in the locker room, the respect he commands. I mean, I think it'd be huge. But we're going to talk about that later on this summer. I know Alex Anthopoulos has been very quiet. He might be talking to him, but I think also I think both parties want to come back. It would still be at this point very shocking to me. And I would also
I
say
agree.
if Freddie Freeman didn't come out, no matter what offer he gets, he's going to let Atlanta match, and he's going to give them the opportunity. I think that too. We're going to talk about that later on in the week. Once again, we appreciate you tuning in here with us, everyone over on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. Make sure to follow us at the Crowded Booth on all social media. Will and Ralph as well, as we are fully in the months of summer now. We said Happy Father's Day yesterday with some great pictures. Will didn't have any, so I had to go snooping on Facebook. Ralph sent one, but we appreciate that. Guys, have a fantastic night. We will see you again Wednesday night, same time, same place. And then Friday, we got our podcast coming up. And make sure to tune in to the College World Series as well. It's been some exciting games so far. We'll talk to you again on Wednesday night.